The president also announced a new tariff this weekend. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, and this is an interesting one. The president saying that he will now put 100% tariff on movies that, as he puts it, are coming into our country that are produced in foreign lands. He says we want movies made in America again. It's not precisely clear whether this includes all foreign language movies that are shown, for instance, in art house cinemas, whether it includes foreign productions on streaming services, or whether it includes all movies that include some aspect of production that are outside of the United States. Because movies, a lot like cars, include various components that are produced in different countries. In a lot of cases, you know, if a movie is scripted in the U.S., cast in the U.S., it might be shot outside of the U.S., in part because a number of other countries include some tax incentives for production of motion pictures. And so the president here is identifying a real issue. You know, talk to anyone in Los Angeles, they do say that a lot of the jobs associated with the motion picture industry have dried up, in part because it's cost prohibitive to shoot movies in California. The president here clearly trying to remedy this issue as part of this broader effort to move production of all kinds of goods and services back to the United States. The president says he does think that new trade deals could be announced this week as part of his effort to reorient global trade. Wolf.
All right, Kevin Liptak over at the White House. Thanks very much. And Pamela, this is personal for me because when I was in Mission Impossible Fallout, the film, they flew me to London for my scene, to film my scene in London. So if Trump gets his way, you couldn't do that anymore. You got to film everything in the United States.
Right, which a lot of people in Hollywood and elsewhere would applaud, right? Not going overseas and having that money be here in the United States, which is what he's doing. But as Kevin pointed out, there's a lot of practical issues with this that would need to be worked out. But interesting. Only you can say that, Wolf, right? I was in Mission Impossible. I had to fly to London.
There are a few other actors in Mission Impossible. Well, they all flew to London.
That's right. That's pretty cool.
I was in James Bond's Skyfall, too.
I know. How many movies have you been in?
A lot.
Okay. Yeah. There you go, folks.
Movie world reacting to a new announcement by the US president ordering a 100% tariff on foreign films shown in the United States. In a post on Truth Social, Donald Trump said Hollywood is being devastated by productions filmed outside the US and is likening that to a national security threat.
Other nations, a lot of them, have stolen our movie industry, and I'm saying if they're not willing to make a movie inside the United States, then we should have a tariff on movies that come in. And not only that, governments are actually giving big money. I mean, they're supporting them financially. So that's sort of a threat to our country in a sense.
Eric Gardner is a founding partner and correspondent for Puck News. Joins us now. I often hear you on one of the podcasts on what is a really good and busy slate. Congratulations on that. Eric, good to have you. First up is a very simple question. Does this proposal even make sense when film production is so global and so sort of intertwined? And films, ultimately, correct me if I'm wrong, are not goods. I think they fall under the sort of, the pillar of services, right, which is generally not what tariffs are all about. So explain what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to explain what's going on. I'm not sure whether Trump himself knows what's going on. I mean, when we're talking about tariffs, you're usually talking about goods that are shipped into the country, and at the point of entry, that's when the taxes are put on. But when you talk about movies, there's no such thing as them being shipped into the country. It's intellectual property. They get screened everywhere. So exactly how is the tariff going to be imposed? Is it going to be on movie tickets? Is it going to be on producers paying the fees? That's just one of the problems. There's also the question of what is a movie that's produced overseas? Are we talking about where the funding is coming from? Is it about, where is it shot? What happens if it's shot in the United States, but there's some post-production, some special effects over in Asia? Does that, qualify as a foreign film? So there are all these questions. Right now, I'm looking at this executive order, the Truth Social post, and it's very vague. I think there are a lot of people in Hollywood very confused right now.
It's interesting. I mean, even here in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi, where there have been a lot of, pretty significant films made of late, or at least parts of them shot here. They offer a rebate here, and that's as they do in many parts of the world. And that's one of the things that Trump seems to be going after here, rather than what the California governor has been suggesting is helping out Hollywood by actually offering the sort of tax breaks that you see in places like Abu Dhabi. So there is a way of supporting the business. It just doesn't make sense necessarily as far as you're concerned, and I can't get my head around it by using tariffs. Look, take Netflix as a key example. That stock is taking a hit from what's been an all-time high after this news. Let's bring up the live market number for you. Netflix last year spent more than half of its budget on international production. 70% of its 300 million subscribers are outside the United States. Its stock down about 3.5% or more today. You have to assume that's mostly on this. Look, the markets are off slightly today, a bit of profit sharing going on. But, I mean, that's a significant drop for Netflix today. What impact would this tariff have on consumers? How would it change things for the everyday viewer and for an organisation like Netflix?
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty unclear right now. I mean, if we're talking just about movies, well, Netflix does most of its, work in television shows. So it's not clear whether or not Netflix is impacted. And if you're, imposing tariffs on movie tickets, maybe that means that Netflix is in a better position. Maybe it means that people, stay home, don't go to the movie theater and just binge watch on Netflix. So until we have details about how this is going to be imposed, it's hard to really game out who's winning and who's losing. But we got to take it seriously. Obviously, Trump is all about tariffs. You're right. There are incentive ways to drive production in the United States. It's definitely a real issue. There used to be a vibrant economy in Hollywood that was based entirely on people producing movies and TV. And these days, a lot of that happens overseas. But, the use of tariffs to rectify that is kind of strange.
All right, with us now is Justin Wolfers, professor of economics and public policy at the University of Michigan, and Art Hogan, chief market strategist at B. Riley Financial. Professor, I want to start with you with this announcement or statement President Trump made overnight of placing 100% tariffs on foreign-made films. Now, it's unclear if he's talking about literally like foreign films that are in a foreign language shot and produced overseas and then sold here in the U.S., or if he's talking about the Avengers shot on a soundstage in London there. Big picture, Professor, what happens if this trade war expands to services and intellectual property?
Yeah, so that's the really big news here. I think actually there's two pieces of news. One, the president has opened a whole new front in the trade war, because the thing about movies is they're a service. And tariffs are normally on goods when stuff crosses into the border. The problem with opening that new front is the US is incredibly vulnerable. We export enormous quantities of services all around the world, much more than we import. And so if anyone were to strike back with retaliatory tariffs, American consulting firms would be worried, medical imaging firms would be worried, computer companies are going to be worried, software engineers are going to be worried, and so on and so forth. That's the first thing. The second thing is, this is Trump taking another step forward into the trade war, and a very poorly thought through step. It's pretty clear that there was no expert analysis. He declared making movies a national emergency. It turns out that's so that he can trigger the emergency powers, but the Emergency Powers Act says it can't apply to movies. So it's just more incoherence, more uncertainty, and every other industry's got to be worried they're next.
I get to give a few movies that were an emergency, but that's an aside right there. Art Hogan, to you. You must have had the last 6 weeks of your life. I can't imagine what it's been like waking up every morning and seeing the new news. When you did see the post from President Trump on the 100% tariffs on films, what's your reaction and the immediate impact in your line of work?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think Justin hit it on the head. First and foremost, you're just opening up a new window that's not good. We, come into the week hoping that we're going to hear about some trade deals announced, yeah. and again, we're just opening a new door to just more bad news, and it's analogous to Trump on Sunday night thinking that perhaps he needs to put a tariff on the International House of Pancakes and then favor Waffle House or something like that. We need to get to a place where the administration delivers some positive news, meaning we've cut a deal with, and then fill in the blank, Canada, Mexico, India, Japan, et cetera, because we're running out of time in this 90-day negotiating period, and we're doing more economic damage the longer we wait. So I think we're at a place now where what the market needs to see is something positive, and we just haven't seen that yet.